The meeting room was tense. On one side sat Jun, Myung, Hyun, and Do-yeon. On the other side, Ozak was joined by several new aliens wearing dark uniforms. Their skin colors shifted between deep blue and purple, which Jun had learned meant they were upset. "This is High Counselor Vexed," Ozak said, pointing to the tallest alien. "He has come from our home world to address concerns." Vexed did not sit. He stood with all four arms behind his back. "We have detected anomalies in human communication patterns. Our matrix cannot categorize them properly." "You mean our metaphors and idioms?" Myung asked. "We mean your deliberate language inconsistencies," Vexed said coldly. "No species we have encountered speaks in such illogical ways." Jun felt a chill. "We're not being deliberate. This is just how humans communicate." Vexed's skin darkened. "Then humans are more dangerous than we thought." After that, new rules were put in place. Humans were told to speak clearly and logically during all official meetings. Metaphors, jokes, idioms, and poetry were banned from diplomatic talks. Later, in Jun's office, the team gathered to talk privately. "They're afraid of us," Hyun said. "But why?" "Just because their translators can't handle our language." Do-yeon had been quiet, his fingers moving over his tablet. Now he looked up. "I think I know why. I've been studying their ship's transmissions." "Isn't that spying?" Jun asked, concerned. "They're broadcasting on open frequencies," Do-yeon explained. "I didn't hack anything. And what I found is interesting. The translation matrix isn't just for talking to other species. It's how they communicate with each other too. But they must have their own language," Myung said. Do-yeon shook his head. "Yes and no. From what I can tell, their original language was very exact and limited. The matrix expanded it, made it work with other species, but now they depend on it completely." "So when our language confuses the matrix," Jun began. "It's not just a translation problem," Do-yeon finished. "It's a threat to their entire society." The next day, more alien ships arrived in Earth's orbit. They were smaller than the first one, but had a different shape. They looked like weapons. Jun was called to an emergency meeting with Earth's leaders. The president looked worried. "Captain Kim, the Voidborn have sent us a message. They say human language contains dangerous patterns that must be studied. They want to take 100 humans back to their world for tests." "That's not happening," Jun said firmly. "We agree," the president replied. "But we need a better solution than just saying no. They have ships all around our planet now." When Jun returned to his team, he found Myung and Do-yeon hunched over a computer. "We found something," Myung said, her eyes bright with excitement. Do-yeon analyzed which types of expressions caused the most trouble for their matrix. Do-yeon turned the screen toward Jun. "It's patterns like these, where words mean the opposite of what they say, or when two contradicting ideas exist at once." "Like bittersweet?" Jun asked. "Exactly," Myung nodded. "Their system is based on binary logic. Everything must be true or false, good or bad. But human language allows things to be both at once. And look at this," Do-yeon pointed to a chart. "When their translators try to process these expressions, they enter what looks like a loop. They keep trying to find a single meaning and can't." Jun rubbed his tired eyes. "So what does this mean for us?" Myung leaned forward. "I think we could create a phrase, something that seems simple but contains so many layers of meaning that their matrix couldn't process it at all." "A phrase that would crash their system?" Jun asked, shocked. "Not permanently," Do-yeon clarified, "but it might force them to recognize the limits of their technology, and maybe reconsider how they see us." Before Jun could respond, an alarm sounded. On the screens around the room, they saw more alien ships entering Earth's orbit. Dozens of them now, forming a ring around the planet. His phone rang. It was the president again. "Captain Kim," her voice was tight with fear. The Voidborn have just classified Earth as a potentially hazardous civilization. They say our language patterns show we cannot be trusted. We have 48 hours to comply with their demands, or it will implement containment protocols. June looked at Myung and Doyun. I think we're out of time. If you're going to create this phrase, it needs to be now. The message came on a Tuesday morning. Captain Jum Kim was drinking coffee in the control room of the International Space Agency when all the screens began to flash. At first, he thought it was a system error. Then he saw the pattern. Perfect lines and circles that could not have been made by humans. Someone get Hyun in here now, Jun said, his cup shaking in his hand. Within minutes, the room filled with people. Scientists, military officers, and government officials all stared at the screens. The message repeated over and over. It was being broadcast on every frequency. Hyun Park ran into the room, his glasses askew and his hair uncombed. As the top language expert at the agency, he was the one person June needed most. Can you read it? June asked. Hyun studied the symbols for a long time. It's not a language we know, but it has patterns. It's definitely a message. The president called an hour later. Captain Kim, you are now Earth's ambassador. Whatever these beings want, you will speak for all of us. June felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. He was just a space program captain, not a diplomat. But he straightened his uniform and nodded. I understand, Madam President. For 3 days, Hyun and his team worked to decode the message. They'd barely slept. On the 4th day, Hyun burst into June's office. They're coming here, he said, and they want to talk. The alien ship arrived in Earth's orbit exactly 1 week after the first message. It was beautiful, a silver disk that seemed to bend light around it. Smaller craft broke off from the main ship and headed toward Earth. The world held its breath. The landing site was a flat field outside the ISA headquarters. Soldiers formed a wide circle, but their guns seemed useless against visitors who could cross the stars. June stood at the front, Hyun beside him. They had practiced what to say, but words failed June as the ship touched down with barely a sound. A door opened in the side of the craft. Light poured out, and then shapes began to move. The aliens were tall and thin. Their skin shimmered like oil on water, and they had 4 arms that moved with grace. Their heads were narrow with large, dark eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. The first alien stepped forward. Around its neck was a small device that glowed blue. People of Earth, it said in perfect, unaccented English, I am Supreme Linguist Oz of the Galactic Consortium. We have been watching your world for some time. June swallowed hard and stepped forward. Welcome to Earth. I am Captain Jum Kim, appointed to speak on behalf of humanity. The alien, Ozik, tilted its head. Your language patterns are unique. Our translation matrix finds them. Interesting. Hyun couldn't contain himself. You understand all our languages. How is that possible? Oz made a sound that might have been laughter. The Universal Translation Matrix is the greatest achievement of the consortium. It has never failed in 4,000 years of diplomatic contacts. More aliens emerged from the ship. They carried strange devices and began setting them up around the landing area. We wish to learn more about humans, Osk said. Your species is unlike others we have encountered. In what way? June asked. You speak with complexity that our initial scans did not expect, Osk replied. Another alien whispered something to Ozik, who seemed troubled for a moment before continuing. But the matrix will adapt. It always does. June noticed how the alien emphasized those last words, almost like it was trying to convince itself. We have prepared quarters for your delegation, June said. We hope you will be comfortable. As they led the aliens toward the facility, Hyun pulled June aside. Did you notice? Hyun whispered. Notice what? When I asked about their translation technology, the device on Ozik's neck flickered for a second. And did you see how the aliens looked at each other when you used that idiom about being comfortable? June hadn't noticed, but now he felt uneasy. What do you think it means? Hyun's eyes were bright with excitement. I think their perfect translator might not be so perfect after all. As they walked toward the building, June looked back at the alien ship gleaming in the sun. Humanity's first contact with alien life had begun, and already there were mysteries to solve. As translators, Do-hyun asked. As bridge builders, Ma-young corrected, helping different minds understand each other. Above them, the void-born ships formed a pattern of light in the sky, a symbol that meant friends across the silence. It was their farewell gift to Earth. In the years that followed, humans would venture out to the stars, carrying with them the most powerful tool in the galaxy, a language that could express contradictions, metaphors, and the beautiful complexity of being alive. And it all began with a single human phrase that crashed their translation matrix. 6 months passed. The seasons changed on Earth, and the relationship between humans and the Voidborn changed too. What began as fear had grown into something new, not quite friendship yet, but understanding. June stood in the new Earth Voidborn Exchange Center, a large glass building that had been built where the aliens first landed. Today was important. The Voidborn High Council was returning to Earth for the first official agreement between their worlds. Nervous? Ma-young asked, adjusting her brother's tie. A little, June admitted. 6 months ago, we were nearly at war. Now we're signing a peace treaty. More than peace, Do-hyun added, joining them. We're helping them rebuild their society, and they're sharing technology with us. The main hall was filled with people from around the world. Scientists, leaders, and ordinary citizens who had helped during the crisis. The Voidborn delegation entered, led by a familiar face. High Counselor Vext. June greeted him warmly. Welcome back to Earth. Vext looked different now. His skin was a healthy blue with flecks of gold. He wore a simpler uniform, and the translation device on his neck was much smaller than before. Captain Kim, Vext said, his voice clear through the new translator. Good to see you again. This new translator was the result of human and Voidborn cooperation. It didn't try to make perfect translations. Instead, it preserved some of the original meaning and structure of each language, letting both sides learn from each other. How are things on your world? June asked. Changes, difficult, Vext admitted, but necessary. The old matrix kept us from growing for too long. Nilla stepped forward from the delegation. She now held an important position in the new Voidborn government. We are learning to think in new ways, she said, her English now almost perfect. Some Voidborn resist, but many embrace the change. We are remembering parts of our culture that were lost. The ceremony began. Leaders from Earth and the Voidborn signed agreements on technology sharing, cultural exchange, and mutual defense. But the most important document was about communication. The Galactic Communication Charter, the President announced, will ensure that no species ever tries to control how others think or speak. After the formal ceremony, there was a celebration. Humans and Voidborn mingled, talking through their new translators. Some brave Voidborn even tried speaking English without translation help. Ma-young found June watching from a quiet corner. You should be proud, she told him. Your team saved Earth. June shook his head. We all did it together. And maybe we saved the Voidborn too, in a way. Did you see the new learning program? Ma-young asked excitedly. Voidborn children are being taught to understand metaphors and poetry. They're learning to think in ways their parents couldn't. And we're learning from them too, June said. Their mathematical language is helping us make breakthroughs in science. Do-hyun joined them, bringing Nilla with him. They had become good friends over the months of working together. I have news, Nilla said, her skin rippling with happy colors. The High Council has approved the first Voidborn human dictionary. It includes idioms, metaphors, and cultural context. That's wonderful, Ma-young said. And Nilla continued, they want you three to receive our highest honor, the Star of Understanding. June looked surprised. Us, but we crashed your matrix. Nilla made the sound they now knew was void-born laughter. Yes, and freed many minds in the process. The old rulers used the matrix to control how we thought for generations. Your phrase broke that control. The celebration continued into the evening. Under the stars, void-born and humans talked, laughed, and shared stories. Some void-born were even trying to tell jokes, not very good ones yet, but they were learning. As the night ended, Vexed approached June one last time. There is a phrase we have adopted into our language, he said. We could not translate it before, but now we understand. What phrase is that? June asked. The silence spoke volumes about what remained unsaid. Vex recited perfectly. We use it to remind ourselves that not everything needs perfect translation to be understood. June smiled. That's the beauty of communication. Sometimes the gaps between words hold the deepest meaning. Later, as the void-born ships prepared to leave, June, Myung, Hyun, and Do-Hyun stood together watching the lights rise into the night sky. What's next for us? Hyun wondered. The universe is full of species with different ways of thinking, June said. I think Earth has an important role to play now. Chaos erupted in the dome. The aliens clutched at their translation devices, which now flashed with random colors and made strange noises. Vexed fell to his knees, all four arms wrapped around his head as if in pain. What's happening to them? June asked, his voice tight with worry. Myung stood frozen, the card still in her hand. I don't know. It wasn't supposed to hurt them. Outside, they heard shouts and the sound of running feet. Human security guards burst into the dome, weapons ready. Stand down. June ordered the guards. No one shoots. One of the younger aliens, a technician named Nilla, was the first to recover. She removed her translation device and placed it on the floor, then looked at June and Myung with wide eyes. She opened her mouth and made sounds, clicks and whistles that must have been her native language without the translator. We can't understand you, Myung said gently. Nilla pointed to the device on the floor, then made a breaking motion with her hands. The phrase broke the translators. June asked. Nilla nodded. Can you fix them? Myung asked. Nilla made a gesture that looked like maybe, but pointed to Vexit, who was still on the ground. Do-Hyun rushed into the dome, carrying his tablet. He had been monitoring from outside. It worked better than we expected, he said, out of breath. Look at this. On his tablet was a map showing red dots all over the world. These are all the void-born ships. Their systems are failing everywhere, not just here. We didn't mean for that to happen, June said. He knelt beside Vexit. Are you hurt? Can we help? The High Counselor looked up, his skin now a pale gray color. Without his translator, he couldn't speak to them, but his eyes showed confusion more than anger. Nilla approached Do-Hyun and pointed at his tablet. She made typing motions with her fingers. I think she wants to use it, Myung said. Do-Hyun hesitated, then handed the tablet to Nilla. The alien technician quickly began typing. Her fingers moved fast over the screen. Words appeared. Matrix KOLAPSSI. All ships. Need help. They need our help, June said. He looked around at the human security team. Call for medical support and technical teams, and contact every ship in orbit. Tell them we're sending help. Over the next few hours, the base became a center of frantic activity. Human technicians worked alongside void-born engineers who could still function without their translators. They used drawings, gestures, and simple written words to communicate. Do-Hyun discovered that the phrase had created what he called a recursive paradox in the translation matrix. It had spread through the void-born network faster than anyone expected, affecting all their ships and systems. By evening, they had made progress. Some of the simpler translation devices were working again, though not perfectly. Nilla had learned enough English words to explain the basics. Matrix, connected, all void-born, she said slowly. not just talk tool, is thinking tool. It helps you think. Mayang asked. Nilla nodded vigorously. Yes. We forget how. Think without. June sat with Vexit, who now had a basic translator working. The High Counselor's skin had returned to its normal blue color. I do not understand, Vex said, his voice mechanical through the simple translator. How can words break matrix? The phrase contains what we call a paradox, June explained simply. It says that silence, the absence of words, can speak loudly about things that aren't said. To your system, that's like dividing by zero. But you understand this phrase? Vexed asked. Yes, Jum said. Humans live with contradictions every day. Our hearts and minds can hold opposite ideas at the same time. Vex was quiet for a long time. We forgot this skill. Long ago, the Matrix made things simple, clear, but maybe too simple. As night fell, reports came in from around the world. The Voidborn ships were no longer in attack position. Many had landed, asking for help from human technicians. The president called June. The Voidborn fleet commander has withdrawn their demands, she said, sounding relieved but confused. What exactly did you do to them, Captain Kim? June looked across the room where Mayang was helping Nilla learn more English words. They were laughing together despite the crisis. We showed them the power of human language, he said, and maybe reminded them of something they had forgotten about themselves. The sky was dark with alien ships when June and Mayang arrived at the meeting place. A large dome had been built in the middle of the field where the Voidborn first landed. Inside, the air was cool and smelled like metal. High Counselor Vexed stood with 5 other aliens. They all wore formal uniforms with glowing badges. Their skin was dark blue, the color of anger or fear. Jung couldn't tell which. Captain Kim, Vexed said, we expected your leaders to come, not you. And he looked at Mayang with all 4 of his eyes narrowed. This language expert. My sister is here to help explain our position, Jung said calmly, though his heart was racing. Our president has given me full authority to speak for Earth. Vexed made a sharp gesture. There is nothing to explain. Your species uses language as a weapon. You deliberately confuse our translation matrix. That's not true, Mayang said. Human language evolved naturally over thousands of years. We didn't design it to confuse anyone. The aliens whispered to each other in their own language. Their translation devices flashed rapidly. Our scientists disagree, Vexed finally said. We have studied your broadcasts, your books, your internet. No natural language should have so many contradictions and double meanings. June took a deep breath. That's why we're here. To help you understand. Vexed tapped a device on his wrist. A hologram appeared, showing Earth surrounded by alien ships. We have placed containment vessels around your world, he said. If you do not comply with our demands, we will isolate Earth from all galactic communication and travel. You will be alone in the universe. That's wrong, Jun said, trying to stay calm. We've done nothing to threaten you. Your very words are a threat. Vex's voice rose. Every time you speak with your illogical phrases, you risk damaging the matrix that unites our civilization. Mayang stepped forward. In her hand was the small card with the phrase they had created. May I ask a question? She said softly. Vexed hesitated, then nodded once. Why are you so afraid of things you don't understand? She asked. The translation devices blinked rapidly. Vexed skin turned almost black. We are not afraid. We are logical. Your language is a danger to order. Order isn't always logical, Mayang continued. Sometimes the most beautiful things in life are the hardest to explain. June watched nervously as Mayang moved closer to the aliens. This wasn't the plan. She was supposed to simply read the phrase they had created. Let me show you something about human language, Mayang said. She looked down at her card, but then put it in her pocket. She had decided to speak from her heart instead. You see us as a threat because we communicate in ways your matrix can't process. But that's the beauty of being human. We embrace contradictions. We live in them every day. The aliens' translation devices were working harder now, lights flashing rapidly. Our joy can contain sadness. Our anger can hold love. We can cry from happiness and laugh from pain. Myung's voice grew stronger. That's not a flaw in our language. It's its greatest strength. One of the alien devices made a high-pitched sound. An alien quickly adjusted it. Enough. Vexed shouted. Your deceptions will not work. We have decided. 100 humans will come with us for study, or Earth will be isolated forever. June stepped forward to stand beside his sister. We have a counteroffer. Vexed skin rippled with colors. What counteroffer could you possibly make? We will show you what human language truly is, June said. Not through tests or studies, but through experience. He nodded to Myung. This was the moment they had prepared for. Everything depended on the next few seconds. Myung took out her card again. She looked at the aliens with kindness in her eyes. This is how humans see the universe, she said softly. Then she read the phrase they had crafted so carefully. The silence spoke volumes about what remained unsaid. For a moment, nothing happened. Then all the translation devices in the room began to flash wildly. The aliens froze in place, their eyes wide, their skin changing colors rapidly. Vexed made a choking sound and reached for his neck device. But it was too late. The translation matrix had begun to crash. Myung Kim arrived at the base early the next morning. Unlike her brother June, who always wore his captain's uniform perfectly pressed, Myung dressed in colorful clothes with her long hair tied back loosely. As a poet and teacher of cultural studies, she saw the world differently than her scientific brother. So these aliens can't understand metaphors, she asked as June led her through security. That's like a human who can't understand smiles or laughter. Exactly, said June. And for some reason, it really bothers them. The aliens had proposed a cultural exchange program. Each day, humans would share something from Earth culture, and the aliens would share something from their worlds. Today was the first session. They entered a large room where the aliens had set up their equipment. Oz greeted them with a small bow, which June recognized as the alien trying to copy human customs. This is my sister, Myung Kim, June said. She studies human culture and language. Oz's translator device blinked rapidly. Sister, you share genetic material but are full-grown individuals. Fascinating. Myung smiled. Yes, that's what siblings are. We're like two branches from the same tree. The translator device made a strange noise. Oz tilted its head. But you are not trees. You are humans. It's just an expression, Myung explained gently. Humans often compare things to help others understand. The aliens looked at each other with what seemed like concern. The cultural exchange began with the aliens showing videos of their home world. It was beautiful, tall crystal cities under 3 moons. They explained their society, their science, and their history in careful, exact words. Then it was Earth's turn. Myung had brought music, art, and poetry. This is a famous painting, she said, showing them the Mona Lisa. People love it because of her mysterious smile. What is mysterious about it? Asked Liren. It is just a face movement. Well, people have debated for centuries what the smile means, Myung explained. Is she happy? Sad? Hiding something? That's why it's powerful. The aliens seemed confused. Then Myung read them a poem she had written. It was about the ocean being like a mother who rocks her children to sleep. As she read, the aliens' translation devices began to flash wildly. One of them made a high-pitched noise and turned off completely. I apologize, Oz said quickly. Our devices need adjustment. Please continue tomorrow. After the aliens left, Myung turned to June. Did you see that? When I read my poem, their translators nearly crashed. "Yes," said Hyun, who had been watching from the side. "It's getting worse each time. They can't handle figurative language at all." That evening, Mayang started a list. She wrote down every expression, metaphor, and saying that seemed to confuse the aliens the most. "Look at this," she told Jun, showing him her notes. The translator had the most trouble with expressions about feelings and with contradictions. "What do you mean?" Jun asked. "When I said a deafening silence, their whole system blinked red. The same with bittersweet memories and cold anger. They don't understand how something can be two things at once." The next day, the cultural exchange continued, but the aliens brought more technicians with them. These new aliens wore different clothes and carried tools. They kept working on the translation devices during the presentations. Mayang noticed something strange. "Have you seen how they talk to each other? They never use metaphors or jokes. Everything is exact." Jun hadn't noticed, but now he saw it too. Their whole way of communicating is different from ours. At lunch, Jun introduced Myung to Do-Hyun Lee, the technical expert who worked with the space agency's computers. "I've been watching their technology," Do-Hyun said quietly. "These aren't just translators. The devices seem connected to their neural systems somehow." "What does that mean?" Myung asked. Do-Hyun's eyes were serious. "It means they're not just using the translators. They're part of them. And if the system fails..." He didn't finish his sentence, but Jun understood. This wasn't just about communication anymore. Something much bigger was at stake. That night, Jun received an urgent message. The Voidborn wanted to meet with Earth's leaders immediately. The message had one more line that made Jun's stomach tight with worry. Discussions regarding the human language anomaly must be resolved. The next morning, Jun met with the alien delegation in the conference room. Large windows showed the alien ship still hovering in the sky, a constant reminder of how everything had changed. Ozek sat at the head of the table, 3 other aliens beside it. They had brought their own chairs that bent and moved to fit their tall bodies. "We wish to explain our translation technology," Ozek said. "It will help us understand each other better." The blue device around Ozek's neck lit up. A hologram appeared in the middle of the table, showing a complex web of light. "This is the Universal Translation Matrix," Ozek said with pride. "It learns any language instantly and finds the perfect words in your tongue." Hyun leaned forward, his eyes wide. How does it work with languages it has never seen before? The alien made a gesture that might have been a smile. "The Matrix sees patterns in all communication. It has processed over 8,000 languages from across the galaxy. And it's never been wrong." Hyun asked. Ozek's skin changed color slightly. "The Matrix is perfect. This is known." Jun noticed how the other aliens nodded quickly, as if this was something they had to agree with. "We would like to study all of your Earth languages," said another alien who introduced itself as Researcher Lurin, "starting with the most common ones." For the next few hours, the aliens recorded humans speaking in different languages. They seemed especially interested in languages with many rules and exceptions. When Hyun spoke Korean, the aliens became very still. Their translation devices blinked rapidly. "Say that again," Lurin asked. Hyun repeated the same sentence. "What did you say?" Ozek asked. "I said, the mountain has eyes, but the river has ears." Hyun explained. "It's just an old saying." The aliens looked at each other. One of them tapped at its device urgently. "But mountains do not have eyes," Lurin said, "and rivers do not have ears. This is not logical." Jun stepped in. "It's a figure of speech. It means that secrets can be heard anywhere." "But that is not what the words mean," Ozek insisted. Its voice had changed, becoming higher. Hyun smiled. "In human languages, words can mean more than one thing. We use metaphors and idioms all the time." The aliens seemed troubled by this. They huddled together, speaking quickly in their own language. Their translation devices flashed on and off. Later, Jun and Hyun walked back to their offices. Did you see how confused they got? Hyun asked, excited. Their system doesn't handle figurative language well. Jun nodded. They seemed almost afraid when their translator couldn't make sense of your saying. I'm going to try something, Hyun said. I want to see what other expressions might confuse them. The next day, they met with the aliens again. This time, Hyun brought a book of Korean proverbs and idioms. As Hyun read from the book, the aliens became more and more agitated. Their skin changed colors, and their devices blinked faster. Please stop, Ozek finally said. There must be a problem with our devices. We will fix them and return. After the aliens left, Jun received a call from the president. How is it going with our visitors? She asked. Interesting, Jun replied. I think we found a weakness in their technology. They don't understand how humans really talk. Is that important? The president asked. Jun looked out the window at the alien ship. I think it might be very important. Their whole society seems built around this translation system, and human language is breaking it. That night, Jun couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about how the aliens had reacted. They weren't just confused. They were worried. Why would a simple translation problem upset them so much? He called his sister, Myung, who worked in the university's linguistics department. I need your help, he said. Can you come to the base tomorrow? There's something about these aliens that doesn't add up. As he hung up, Jun looked out his window at the stars. Somewhere up there was a civilization that had crossed the void between stars, but couldn't understand a simple human metaphor. And that might be the most important discovery of all. 3 days after the phrase was spoken, Earth still buzzed with activity. Void-born ships hovered in the sky, but now they came asking for help, not threatening war. Every major city had alien visitors working with human technicians. At the main base, Jun hadn't slept much. He coordinated teams around the world, making sure the aliens got the help they needed while keeping everyone safe. You should rest, Mayam told him, bringing coffee. You look terrible. Jun smiled tiredly. Thanks for the honesty. It's what crashed their system, remember? She said with a small laugh. Across the room, Do-Yun sat with Nilla and 3 other void-born engineers. They had built a new type of translator, simpler than the Matrix but good enough for basic communication. The main problem is still unsolved, Do-Hyun explained to Jun. Their whole society was built around the translation matrix. It wasn't just for talking to other species. It connected all void-born to each other, like the internet. Jun asked. More than that, Nilla said, her English improving hourly. Matrix helps us think, process ideas. Without Matrix, many void-born cannot function well. This explained the reports coming in from around the world. Some void-born became confused or lost without their Matrix connection. Others seemed to adapt quickly, almost as if freed from something. A message came through on Jun's tablet. It was from the alien mothership in orbit. High Counselor Vexed requests meeting. Important news. An hour later, Jun, Myung, Do-Yun, and Hyun sat in the conference room. Vexed entered with 2 other aliens. Their skin colors were steadier now, mostly calm blue with occasional flashes of green. Captain Kim, Vexed began, using one of the new simple translators. We have situation to discuss. Go ahead, Jun said. Matrix collapse reveals problem in void-born society. Vex seemed to struggle with the words. We become too dependent. Some void-born cannot think without Matrix help. But not all of you, Mayum noted. Nilla adapted quickly. Yes, Vex nodded. Younger void-born adapt better, but there is bigger problem. He paused, his skin shifting to purple. Matrix was not just tool, was control. Control, Jun asked. What do you mean? Some thoughts, not allowed in Matrix, Nilla explained from beside Do-Yun. Certain ideas rejected as illogical. Over time, void-born forget how to think these thoughts. The humans looked at each other. Hyun was the first to understand. The matrix was censoring thoughts that didn't fit its logical structure, he said. Over generations, the Voidborn lost the ability to think in certain ways. Like metaphors and contradictions, Mayung added. The very things that make human language so rich. Vex nodded slowly. Yes, matrix made by old rulers to keep order. Make Voidborn think same way. Now matrix broken, many Voidborn remember old ways of thinking. That's why some of your people seem almost happy about this, Jun realized. There is division now, Vex admitted. Some want new matrix, same as old. Others want freedom to think new ways. Do-hyun had been studying data on his tablet. The matrix can be repaired, he said. But should it be? That's not a technical question. It's a social one. Vex's skin turned a color they hadn't seen before, a soft purple with gold spots. Later, they would learn this was the Voidborn color for hope. We ask for human help, Vex said. Not to fix old matrix, to build something new, better. What exactly do you want from us? Jun asked. Teach us how to understand contradictions, how to think with flexibility, Vex said, and help build new system that connects without controlling. It was a huge request. Jun looked at his team. Mayung nodded eagerly. Do-hyun gave a thumbs up. Hyun smiled. We would be honored to help, Jun said. But this should be a true exchange. We have much to learn from you too. Over the next few days, something remarkable happened. The Voidborn ships that had come as a threat became centers of learning. Aliens and humans worked side by side, teaching each other their ways of thinking. Not everyone was happy. Some older Voidborn couldn't adapt to life without the Matrix. Some humans feared the aliens despite the peace, but many on both sides embraced the chance to learn something new. 1 month after the phrase was spoken, Jun stood on the roof of the base, watching Voidborn ships glowing in the night sky. Mayung joined him. Do you think we did the right thing? She asked. Jun thought about it. We showed them a new way to see the universe. And they're showing us things we never imagined. That seems right to me. Myung smiled. All because of one phrase that was both simple and impossible. Kind of like humans, Jun said, looking up at the stars. Myung's office looked like a storm had hit it. Papers covered every surface. On the walls were charts and pictures of brain scans, both human and alien. In the center of it all, Mayung and Do-hyun worked without stopping. We have less than 36 hours left, Jun said as he brought them coffee. Neither looked up. Mayung was writing phrases and crossing them out. Do-hyun was running each phrase through a computer program he had built to simulate the alien's translation system. How close are you? Jun asked. Do-hyun pushed his glasses up. We're getting there. Look at this. On his screen was a graph showing waves. When he typed in simple sentences, the waves moved in regular patterns. But when he entered Mayung's test phrases, the waves became wild and jumbled. This one almost worked. Mayung pointed to a phrase at the bottom of her list. The program got stuck in a loop for 8 seconds. But we need something stronger, Do-hyun added. Something that will make their whole system pause long enough for them to notice. Jun looked out the window. More alien ships had arrived overnight. Earth's own military was on high alert, but everyone knew we couldn't win a fight against the Voidborn. What have you learned about how their matrix works? Jun asked. Mayung stood up and stretched her tired back. It's built on perfect logic. Everything must have a clear meaning. But human languages aren't like that. We use context, tone, and shared cultural understanding. Like when we say break a leg to wish someone good luck, Do-hyun explained. Their system tries to understand why we want someone to get hurt when we're being supportive. But that's not enough to crash their system, Mayung continued. We need something deeper, something that creates a logical paradox. The door opened, and Hyun came in, carrying a book. I've been researching language paradoxes. Look at this. He put the book down and pointed to a page. This is called the liar's paradox. It's the statement, this sentence is false. If it's true, then it must be false. But if it's false, then it must be true. Mayung's eyes lit up. That's exactly what we need, but it needs to be more subtle. If it's too obviously a paradox, their system might just reject it. For hours, they worked on crafting the perfect phrase. It needed to seem simple on the surface but contain multiple meanings and contradictions beneath. By evening, Mayum looked up with a smile. I think I have it. She handed a paper to Doyun, who typed the phrase into his program. The screen went blank for a moment, then error messages filled it. The simulation had crashed completely. It works, he whispered. At least in theory. June took the paper and read the phrase. It seemed so simple, just a few words. But as he thought about all the meanings and contradictions hidden inside it, he understood its power. Will this hurt them? He asked, suddenly concerned. Doyun shook his head. It shouldn't. Based on what we've learned, it will just temporarily overwhelm their matrix, like a computer freezing when it gets too many commands at once. But what if their brains are too connected to the system? June asked. Mayung put her hand on his shoulder. That's why we need to warn them first. Give them a chance to prepare. Just then, June's phone rang. It was the president. Captain Kim, the Voidborn have moved up their deadline. They say they detect unusual activity at your facility. They're demanding an answer in 12 hours, not 48. After he hung up, June looked at his team. We're out of time. We need to use the phrase now. But we haven't tested it properly, Doyun said, worried. We have no choice, June replied. I'll request an emergency meeting with High Counselor Vext. Mayung, you'll come with me to deliver the phrase. And if it doesn't work? Hyun asked quietly. June looked out at the alien ships circling Earth. Then we'll have to find another way. But I believe this will work. As they prepared to leave, Mayung carefully wrote the phrase on a small card. The words that might save humanity, or make things much worse. Are we doing the right thing? She asked her brother. June wasn't sure, but they had run out of options. We have to try. Sometimes, the only way to make someone understand you is to show them they don't understand you at all.